All right, welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today, we've got another ESO mechanics guide, and we're going to be taking a look at the twins in Veteran Maw of Lorkhaj. This video is going to be a bit different today. We're going to be watching the POV from two amazing tanks and interviewing them while we watch to get a first-hand look at what they're doing, what they're looking for, what they're thinking about during this fight. Now, this video is going to be focused on the tank mechanics for this fight rather than the overall boss mechanics, so keep that in mind, but we will cover some of the big picture strategies that we are using during this fight. If you enjoy these mechanics videos and these ESO guides, make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you can catch more in the future. We've got a lot of them planned and coming up, and like the video as well. And if there are any fights that you would like to see in particular, go ahead and leave that down in the comments below and we'll try to make that happen for you. All right, so the two tanks that are going to be joining us today are Bubbles and Magway. We're going to be watching both of their POVs, and we are going to be watching the POV of the guild Nin Meldar, aka Ninkor. Bubbles, a founder of the guild, will be tanking Skinrai, and Mag is going to be tanking Vashai during this fight. Both are exceptionally skilled tanks for the guild, cutting through all of ESO's vet hard content. Bubbles and Mag, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the kind words.
Thank you, sir.
Right, now I mentioned that we won't be going in depth on the mechanics of this fight and are going to be really focusing on the tank aspects of that, which is why, of course, you two are both here. But what I will say is that the overall strategy that we use during this fight is commonly referred to as the left-left strategy or a clockwise strategy. Big picture, the two tanks are going to be holding the two bosses on separate sides of the arena, and then during convergence, any of those who are marked are going to move in a clockwise or left-hand circle around the arena to avoid running into each other. This also makes the job of the tanks a lot more simple during the fight, as they will both be focusing on their same boss for the duration of the fight, with one or two minor spots that we'll talk to, for example, at the very beginning. As far as the DPS go, it makes it relatively easy for them as well, because they can continue to convert in the same direction. Really, the healers are the ones that have to really pay attention, since they can both end up on the same boss sometimes and have to cross heal. All right, so we've got Mag's POV all called up here, ready to go. You can see that he's going to be lining up initially on Skinrai. Mag, we've got you here on the sort of left-hand side of the arena. Bubbles, you can't quite see. They're just off to the right-hand side. But before we begin, Mag, for this fight, would you like to go over anything that you are doing to prepare for this boss in particular? For example, your gear, any of the skills that you have selected, things like that.
Okay, well, you're definitely going to need chains. It doesn't matter whether it's Silver Leash or I main a DK tank, so I have chains automatically. I'm going to do all my timed procs ahead of time, like Balance, Igneous Shield, and Green Dragon's Blood on my front bar before I run in and range taunt the boss.
Any gear in particular, any sets that you're using for this fight, or is it kind of at your discretion?
It's just main tank sets, Nazare, Yona, TT.
All right, well, let's go ahead and hit play here, and Mag, feel free to pause me at any time as we go through here to talk about anything in particular that you're thinking about, timing, things like that. And we will plan on watching both of these POVs in real time after we get through both Mag and Bubbles, so that you can see exactly how this looks like in real time. All right, well, that will get started here.
It's going to be a false start. Reposition, taunt, turn around.
All right, keeping them away from the group.
I got my head color, range taunt the boss.
I'm going to pause there really quick, because I feel like this is a pretty big key part of this fight, is that initial swap with the two tanks to really establish your battle rhythm and the two bosses you're both going to be focusing on. So you guys did note at the very beginning there was that false start. That's common in this fight, where you'll taunt the initial bosses, they'll suddenly disappear and then reappear. That can catch people off guard, so watch out for that. Walk me through a little bit, Mag, as we I'm going to scrub the video back a little bit here. What is keying you guys in to know when you need to swap the bosses here?
When we get our head colors, and they will go and kneel down to do it.
Got it. All right, let's see if we can find that exact moment here. So here we are, normal.
See, they're channeling, and boom.
Yep, so they channel, they both raise their hands up in the air for a second there that we just saw, and now you can very clearly, it's a lot easier, I think, in my experience, it's much easier to see what the head color is when you have the yellow head color. The blue ones can be pretty difficult, but you can see very clearly everybody's got head colors now. Okay, so that's your initial queue to swap bosses. And that makes sense, right? Because you can see that on Mag's side of the arena, all of the DPS have the yellow head color as well. And Bubbles, on your side, all of the DPS and healers have the blue head color. So we need to get those bosses swapped so we can actually do damage to them. Cool. For your guys' coordination, sounds like you guys just both did a quick countdown. And then are you guys hitting your taunts, looks like range taunts, right at the expiration of that countdown?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Here I am getting the boss into position for the negate for when it drops.
This looks pretty spectacular. I'm going to pause here for a second, Mag. This positioning, are there any challenges to getting the boss into this side? And kind of what is your overall strategy for positioning of Vashai during this fight?
I usually try to go about the third bench in.
Okay. So right over here on the left side.
Mm-hmm.
And are you trying to keep this boss as close to the wall as you can?
Yeah.
Got it. All right. And Mag, as we watch, are there any attacks in particular that you're looking out for? Anything that needs to be dodge rolled or must be blocked?
The negate bubble.
The negate bubble is really a big one. Okay. As far as blocking or dodge rolling, it looks like your resources are really good here. We're not in a negate. I mean, the negate bubble did just drop, but resource management doesn't look like it's too challenging in this fight for you. Is that true?
Not right now. No, it depends on how many negate bubbles you got to roll out because there's no set number that he's going to drop during phases. He's just going to drop them.
Got it. And speaking of, there's that first negate bubble happening right at the same time as convergence as well. So we'll see all of the DPS and healers moving around while you are getting out of this negate. And it looks like you're going to position them right next to the edge of that negate bubble just for the second negate bubble that's going to drop to keep them on the edge of the arena.
Correct, and keep them somewhat overlapped.
Ah, yes. Right, I'm going to pause really quick. The boss just vanished there, which means we must be going into prayer phase already. Anything that you guys are looking out for during prayer phase other than getting to your correct boss?
No, just seeing where our boss lands.
Yeah, the only other thing that I would be looking for at this point is kind of seeing if there's potentially anybody down, any of the DPS, because at this point, with them being in prayer phase, this can be a good point for people to grab reses, but because the tanks are having to move, if we have somebody of the opposite head color that's kind of hanging out in one of our lanes that we're running in, that can then, cause us to blow up. So with prayer phase, it's definitely one of those where it's kind of, they go up, they disappear, we figure out which side we need to move to, and then kind of keeping an eye on what's going in front of us. That way we can react to how we're moving. That way we don't inadvertently change our normal path that we're running, inadvertently blow each other up. So trying to dodge something that's in front of us. So it's just kind of taking that moment to, get your situational awareness, see what's going on, and as typical with tanks, try not to wipe the group.
Well, I think that's a really important point to make here. The two POVs that we're going to be watching for this fight are probably the cleanest runs I have ever seen of the twins in VMoL. And that's not always necessarily a good thing to watch. It'll be great for us to explain the mechanics to you all. But that being said, this fight can really get off the rails really fast as soon as a couple of people go down, because they will take head colors while they are corpses. And sometimes it's very tough to see that. And then they'll res in the middle of the wrong head color group, and it can get really, really messy really fast. So as far as tanking goes, I think you kind of mentioned it, Bubbles. One of the things I would highlight is you got a lot of crazy DPS running around all over the place that are probably panicking in some way and haven't been here before, and they probably aren't looking at the head colors that they've got and where the two tanks are, and as soon as a rogue DPS runs right into you and blows you up because they got the wrong head color, now you got big problems because your tank is down. So keeping an eye on where everybody is and crossing the room at the right time is always important.
Also, another thing to note, during this phase, while you're waiting, as the tank, you can keep an eye out for any lingering ads that you got to wrangle into boss.
Yeah, and especially for you, Mag, it seems that as we get towards the end of the fight, when all the ads really start to pile up, especially the very last prayer phase when there's a ton of ads that show up, wrangling in those ads can be very challenging. I know there's a lot of tanks who have been asking me about, like, how do I chain in all these ads while I'm also trying to keep the negate bubbles in the right spot, while I'm trying to make sure, you know, I don't get heavy or any of those other things. So that'll be something for us to take a look at too in the future.
Yeah, and I can go over a little bit of that later on when we start to get into it.
All right, so we've found our correct boss there, and I'll note here, Mag, as we stop this, it looks like you and Bubbles, after the prayer phase has ended and everybody's still good, kind of are going towards the center of the arena here. Is that true? While you guys don't have head colors?
If you kind of look at where Mag's going, like you can see that kind of candle that's right there by him, that blue one. He's gonna kind of stay to the left of that one. I got a little far over on this time, but typically I'm going to stay on the what would be the viewer's right of that yellow candle there, and that way, just as we're moving, just in case, you know, because there's never any lag in ESO ever. Right. So you don't want, you know, us showing that we don't have a head color, but the game actually thinks that we do have a head color, and if we get too close with opposite head colors, then we blow each other up. So it's not straight down the middle. We're usually offset from each other. And I mean, honestly, after practicing it a couple of times together, Mag and I just, you know, zip down our lanes and, you know, easy peasy.
So, I mean, that's always important. Mag's kind of got overall the left-hand side of the arena. You, Bubbles, kind of overall have the right-hand side of the arena to make sure you guys don't run into each other. As far as the head colors go and making sure that you guys get the correct boss that you guys want to be tanking, is that also part of the reason why you're going to the center of the arena here?
I got to get closer to the Vashai so I can get the correct head color so I can go back to Vashai. Got
it. Okay. So let's take a look at that really quick. I'm sure that this is probably one of the aspects that's a little bit confusing for other tanks, potentially trying to run this same strategy. Okay, so there we go. So Mag, you're closest to the boss. It's right behind you now. That'd be Skinrai, and Bubbles, you're obviously standing over there next to Vashai. And now we can see that head colors have finally appeared on everybody, and everybody next to Vashai's got the blue, and then of course everybody behind you and yourself, Mag, have got that yellow head color. And now it looks like, did you just throw a taunt out?
Well, I still had taunt on Vashai, but I'm about ready to re-up it.
Oh, that's right. Yep, you've got 6 seconds left on it. Perfect. Okay, so at this point now, the challenge is going to be for Mag and Bubbles to just get the bosses back into position without killing anybody that's the opposite head color or being killed by anybody who's not the opposite head color. All right, so it looks like pretty much rinse and repeat at this point for the fight, Mag. Anything in particular to note here other than the addition of quite a few ads coming in?
Just like right here, how I roll dodge off to the right. It gives you a chance to, that's your opportunity, and one of your very few opportunities to grab ads as they drop in is when that bubble gets dropped.
So using that opportunity of getting out of the negate gives you a clear view of what's going on in the arena behind. There's probably going to be some ads there, and then you're using chains and you're focusing on pulling in any ad that's got a blue head color, correct?
Correct. Because chains, they only have a range of, I think, 22 meters, so it's not always going to reach from the position you're in.
Right.
Especially for Mag, because Mag's really got the hardest job here, and so when he's got the ability to kind of look and see what's going on the other side of the arena, when he's pulling, you know, Vashai over to the wall, trying to place that negate, he's now even farther away from things that are on the other side of the arena. So there's no way he can change or chain and then even getting a ranged taunt, like he just can't do it. So and getting that negate placed is really the critical piece. So for the ads and pulling those in, there's a lot of times throughout the fight that, you know, Mag's just he's not going to be able to.
I think that's probably the biggest thing to highlight, right? Is that like Mag's job right now is getting that negate in the right spot. It's not ad management. It's making sure that the negate goes in the correct spot to keep this fight manageable. And then after that, from a priority perspective, it's then to think about getting those ads in to help the team out. But I will say overall as a DPS, these ads really aren't that big of a deal until you start to get towards the end, and there start to be a lot of them. But you don't really have to worry about getting one shot by them. Your healers can do a great job to heal you through any damage that the ads are doing. So it's not super critical. Don't be crazy concerned as a tank to run out there, grab those ads, and then before you know it, there's a negate right in the smack in the middle of the arena.
Yeah, and this fight's actually a little bit easier than it had been in the past. Our trial lead for this one, she would have some of the other DPS helping with chaining and ads, and she would assign ad duty to a couple of the other DPS, and that's not always you can plan to do that, but you never know who's going to get what negate, or which head color. Especially here, this fight, you can kind of give other people, other jobs to do other than DPS or, things of that nature. But depending on how the conversions go, you can have everybody that you, before the fight, said, hey, you're going to help chain ads. They're now stuck on, a particular side of the arena, and now they've got to kind of take burn off the boss to move over to get ads. So even if you try to plan for that, it can go sideways on you, and that's no fault of the trial lead. It's no fault of the tanks. It's no fault of the DPS. It's just the joys of RNG. And right now, with the current kind of state of everything, and I do believe we're in update 40 right now as we're kind of talking about this, and so over the past couple of updates, especially for Dragonites, they've made some changes. So one, Dragonite DPS is in the best spot that it's been for a while, and then they made some changes to one of the morphs of chains. So you now have a morph of chains that the DPS can use that provides buffs for them. So you've got a skill that may not normally be in their rotation that they can flex in. So if you have multiple Dragonites, great. If not, then as Mag was saying, using Silver Leash or some other type of pull or chain, is super helpful as well.
Yeah, something that gets that soft taunt rather than a hard taunt for sure. Let's continue on. All right, so again, positioning of the boss there, Mag, just to make sure that you've got the negate dropping down. Classic first person as a tank. All right, looks like that second negate bubble has dropped down. Convergence has occurred. A pretty clean swap. There's a third negate going down, and we're just kind of rotating around the arena here. And back into prayer phase. So in this case, bosses are on opposite sides of the arena from the first prayer phase, so easy for both of you all, relatively close at hand. And again, moving towards the center to set head colors. And now head colors are set, and just bringing your boss back to the right spot. I imagine, at least for me as DPS, and the first few times I was in here, it was always very confusing for me to keep track of which boss is which, until I started actually looking at and reading their name. I imagine you guys have your own technique on how to keep track of which boss is yours.
Yeah, so I mean, for this particular one, it's a little bit easier than some, because with Vishai, he's got the one-handed shield that he's rocking, and then Skinrise got his two-hander, and so especially for me and the way the polls worked in this particular group and these runs is that in other portions of VMoL, there's an ad Savage who's a two-hander and has a pretty nasty cone. So as the off tank, the Savage was typically my responsibility to place and stuff like that. So that just kept it pretty much simple for me the entire time, because I can just look for the cat with the two-handed mace. That's my responsibility.
Right.
And so it's kind of, whenever you can break something down that simple and make the job that easy, like, do it.
Yep.
Everything can be complicated enough, but it's like, oh, the kitty with the big hammer is my responsibility. Got it. Like, it makes it super easy.
I'll also note that it's important to keep track of each individual boss's overall health, as you want to make sure you burn them down at about the same time as just part of the overall strat. If you kill one too early, obviously it's going to end up with the other boss wiping out the rest of the group. Now, what I can say in our group at least, we'll oftentimes break out keeping track of percentages on the boss, one for mechanics, but two for cases like this or during the twins in Dreadsail Reef, keeping track of those separate burn rates. We usually delegate that to some of the DPS because I know while tanking it can be a lot to handle. And I know for new tanks out there, it is definitely a lot to handle, and some people will ask you to do a lot. So if you are struggling to keep track of some of those things, like what percentage the boss at, while you also are, blocking and dodge rolling and making sure you're not dead, feel free to ask some of your DPS to keep track of some things for you too. I'm going to pause really quick here for a second. This is a question kind of for both of you all. We just saw two groups of ads drop into the arena. As they're dropping in, you can see that there's a blue set of kind of smoke that comes down and a yellow set of smoke that comes down for each of the separate ads. Is that something that you guys are looking at as they are dropping in, or are you really trying to identify the head color of these ads? Because I can see right now, Mag, you're about to start pulling some of these ads in since you had just maneuvered for a negate.
Yeah, because it also gives you an idea of how many ads you need to pull over to your side, because the ads increase as the fight goes on.
Are there any things, are there any tells or keys that either the boss is giving off or health percentages that let you know when those ads are on the way in?
No.
Yeah, it's typically usually shortly after prayer phase, when you kind of get everything resituated. You'll get new friends to join the fight, and like Mag said, you get more of them with each prayer phase that you get through, so it ramps up. So it's not a DPS race per se on some of these things, but it's definitely one of those where the better the burn for the group, the more manageable the ads are, because you're having less waves of the big numbers. Kind of, I think you saw at the beginning of the fight, we each had one, and then the next phase we got two. I think this time, 3 just landed. More prayer phases you go through. If you're a tank or a trial lead and you're kind of, experiencing multiple prayer phases and the overall health is still pretty high, that should definitely be something to pay attention for and try to make some adjustments, because then at that point, you're going to have a lot of stuff on the floor. Like here, we're almost, I think we're in execute really, as far as being under 25% when we get three ads. And when I say 3 ads, it's 3 per boss. So
correct.
Vashai is going to bring down 3 friends. Skinrai is going to bring down 3 friends. And so in this particular instance, like when you saw Mag's POV, Mag kind of gets screwed on this one, because Skinrai's ads actually spawned right there behind him and then come running across, and then the wills of Vashai are on the other side of the arena. So it's one of those where Mag's now got a bunch of movement in front of him, and he's got to wait and let everything move, because if he just starts, basically taunting or chaining everything, then he's going to taunt, the Skinrai ads, which he doesn't want to do, and then he's got those that he's got, there in his hip pocket as well. So when you start getting into, after the second prayer phase, when you start getting 3, or more, that's when things start getting really, really interesting really quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And like you mentioned, I wouldn't describe this boss fight as a DPS race, but you definitely want to have, what I would describe as good enough DPS. Enough DPS that you can get through the content that you and your group can manage, be it, the number of prayer phases, the number of ads, things like that. So if you are a new trial lead out there and you are wondering, hey, like, how do I get the overall burn of my DPS up? It's not just as simple as, hey, DPS, get better numbers on your parses, do more damage on your parses. There's a lot that goes into it in ESO, to include your CP that each person has in the group, the type of sets your support classes are wearing, and your support DPS are wearing as well. So if you have questions on that, subscribe to the channel, stay tuned. We've got a lot of guides coming out in the future, and ask those questions in the comments too. We'll make a video just for you.
The biggest things is dead DPS don't do any damage.
That's right.
So if your DPS are down because of, complications with conversions and stuff like that, that's going to be your biggest source of damage loss. It's not going to be parsing numbers per se. It's going to be people being down. And so that's the big piece in here.
Yeah, really paying attention to your feet and not giving your friends bad hugs is super critical in this fight. All right. I just got a quick shout out, Mag. I mean, amazing job getting all 3 of your ads over to you. I mean, you make it look easy here. I know it's actually very difficult, and it takes a lot of precision to get those chains and get those things moved over here. A question I'll ask, since I don't main a tank, I do primarily healing and DPS, is for both of you guys, are there any times where, you know, maybe you don't have an actual taunt on every single ad in the arena, but they're close enough, they're good enough, it's not really worth you having to spend a lot of effort to try and get a taunt or a chain on?
Yeah, little guys, I mean, they really don't matter. They're going to die and cleave pretty quick, and they usually don't slap the crap out of your healers as easy as the big guys. It's the big guys you really got to focus on.
Yeah, and especially with some of the smaller ads, and because there is CC immunity in ESL, and so when a target gets hit with the crowd control ability, they have CC immunity for a while, and so sometimes different damage skills have, you know, built-in crowd control abilities on there, and so when that happens, and an ad gets hit with a CC skill, even a soft CC, and some snares and stuff like that, Wall from, you know, an ice staff has a snare, or used to, I can't remember off the top of my head, but
Trap is another great example, almost always run by DPS.
Yeah, so
CC on there.
Yeah, so you can, when that's, and you're not always going to see when that happens. So as a tank, you're not going to know, and so a lot of it's just it's almost, you know, you see the ad, you see what needs to happen to it, and you select the right skill. Let's say just say chains or silver leash, like you're trying to get the ad to you, and you press it, and it hits, and the ad doesn't move. And at that moment, you don't know, is this lag? Is it CC immune? You know,
exactly. Yeah.
So you're kind of, you know, stuck with a guessing game to a little bit. So, you know, you're wanting to chain these in. It's one of those where you can, and I've done it. I mean, I probably shouldn't have on certain things, but you know, there's something that needs to be chained, and I'm trying to chain. I'm just pressing chains. Nothing is happening, and so it's like crud. So I mean, for me, if it's an ad that needs to be chained, I hit chains, it doesn't move. Chains will have a soft taunt. I'll swap to a ranged taunt, put a hard taunt on it, and just move on. Because I can spend seconds sitting there just trying to, you know, chain something that's not going to move, or I can just go ahead, hit it with a hard taunt, move on, go to the next ad, and that way you don't put yourself in a position where you trying to get one ad, you've let 2 ads go, and they're beating up on your healer.
Awesome. All right. Getting close to the end of this fight. As you mentioned, the group is basically in execute now. Hopefully not having to do another prayer phase. We might see one. I don't think we do. Convergence has just occurred, so everybody is running around in a big old circle avoiding each other. And yep, last prayer phase for the group, it looks like. Still a rinse and repeat here. We'll also note here, while we are focusing on tank mechanics, if you happen to be a DPS in this fight and are watching this video, take note that it's easier to just stay with the boss that you're at. Stay in a nice controlled group, let your tanks get the right head colors and maneuver around first, and then once the tanks have positioned those 2 bosses in the right spot, then head on out and get to the right place without running into each other. I'm going to back up really quick here for a second, because this is a super exciting time in the trial when all of these enemies just jump into the arena. Boom! Look at that. Wow, this if I were tanking this, I would feel pretty overwhelmed right now, even though, you know, we're at 1.3%. All the DPS should be just focusing down on the 2 bosses to make sure that they go down as quickly as they can. But anything to note for you guys or what you're thinking here in this chaos?
No, pretty sure, but at this point my boss was already dead, so I just had to.
I'm just again ad control. So with Skinrai's little friends, Skinrai has and we'll see this probably on my POV, has an interruptible panel, and the panel, you know, stuns. The ads have the same thing. So even though it's like whoop whoop, we're down at 1%. If you've got multiple of Skinrai's ads and they get their little channel abilities off, now all of a sudden with 1 or 2%, now half your group's down, because those bastards need to get picked up. And so even on those moments there towards the end where it's like, oh, easy clap, we've got this, you still got to pay attention, be mindful of the mechanics, and make sure you pick those up to prevent that scenario where you go from, having 12 people with full health bars and a boss with, 2% left, and all of a sudden, now there's only 6 health bars that have any of the red resource, and things just got really spicy really quickly.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I have been 0.6% away from a clear and the group wipes because everybody suffers from what I call execute panic, where somebody says the word execute or you look at their health and you're like, oh man, we've only got a couple % left. Let's just try to get through this and do as much damage as we possibly can, and people start to miss mechanics and not focus on doing what you've just been doing for 99% of the fight that has been working, and now in the last 1%, mix it up and end up getting killed. Guys, anything to add on Mag's POV, and then we'll jump over to Bubbles' POV? I think there'll probably be a little bit less to explain since we kind of covered a lot of both of you guys' perspective.
Just on this last little part, since my boss is dead and I don't have a head color, it's really easy to pick up the skin rye head color and then blow up your friends.
Oh. So even though one of the bosses is dead, again, paying attention to head colors and not running into each other is important.
Yeah, let prayer phase continue. Yeah, or treat prayer phase as, even though the boss is up, because if you go running over there, then like Mag said, you could wind up picking up a skin color or the head color that you didn't intend to, and then blow everybody up. So yeah, just like you just mentioned, Boojum, you've already done the same thing successfully for 99% of the fight. Just finish. Just keep doing what you've been doing that's been working.
Yep, exactly. All right, here we are with Bubbles' point of view at this point. Again, at the beginning of this fight, setting up with Vashai on the right-hand side of the arena. We're going to see that we're going to swap positions as we move forward. Bubbles, is there anything that you'd like to go over as far as skills or gear or CP, food, anything you're thinking about for this fight?
Nothing really specific for this fight, but just being kind of candid, having already run this before several times recently with this group, with the guild, I was a little bit more familiar with this fight going in. And so, for somebody who may not be as familiar or comfortable and there being a lot of movement, warden tanks with Bird of Prey, with the morph that gives you that expedition boost. That's a skill that, any sort of movement skill that you may have, that you can kind of buff your speed, could be helpful for all the movement that's going on. Again, after you kind of get a feel for it and where to position, you don't need that as much. But if you're moving around a lot, you're not feeling like you're getting to where you need to be quickly, that's a skill that you can use. Other than that, no, it's really just kind of the kind of the standard tank sets. For this one, I'm wearing Pearlescent and PA. I can't remember which monster I'm running. It may be Arch Druid. But yeah, nothing too terribly special out of this one.
All right, great. Well, let's jump on in. Anything in particular to note for you guys on positioning of the boss right prior to the swap?
Just giving yourself enough room to keep the two separated, to make sure that head colors don't do weird things, but at the same point in time not being too far spaced out to be able to do that swap quickly. So Mag and I definitely had a little sweet spot where we were at with these two and able to get the tank swaps really clean. So just finding that for the group that you're running with, that's the big thing to me right here.
Perfect. And if I remember right, I think we had a couple of pulls during this prog where we tried keeping the bosses right next to each other to maximize cleave, and decided that was maybe not the best for our group in particular when we all got head colors at the wrong time and popped.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yep, that's Arch Druid. I just saw the bear proc, so that's the monster that I was using.
Perfect. Now that looked like a big heavy.
It was a big heavy. If you notice, with my POV, what I was just doing is I was spending too much time waiting for that skin right ad. So he popped over there behind Mag, and if you look at kind of, you can see exactly what I'm I'm thinking I'm looking at just by my camera angle. So if you go back a little bit further, you can see my camera kind of pan and tilt, and so I'm looking. So this is one of those moments where I'm not looking at the heavy like I should. I'm trying to get the rage of Skinrai, get the rage over to position it, which is great. That's what you're supposed to be doing. But now I've missed the heavy on the boss, and so now I'm just gonna, I'm gonna eat it. That's some immediate feedback that I'm about to get for not paying attention to the boss.
Yep, sure enough. Luckily, what I'll say is you've got a lot of health here. Looks like you took about 25, 26k damage there, something like that. So not a one-shot heavy like we see in some trials at least, but, being stunned and on your back is always not fun.
True, and especially with this group, with Firm and L, our two healers, it's a little, I'm not going to lie, it's a little bit easy sometimes to take your healers for granted, because it's like, oh, they got this. I'm not going to die here. So that's one of those where it was like, probably leaned a little bit too hard on my healers on that one.
Something to note, I would say probably the primary difference that I've seen between the two twins here. For you, Bubbles, your biggest concern is not going to be negate bubbles, but it's these little rage of Skinrai and Skinrai himself channeling and putting a lot of your compatriots into pins, including yourself. Got it stopped here. You can see that there is the red little sparks that are flying off of them while they're channeling, letting you know that it is something you can interrupt. And really it's as simple as getting that interrupt. Something I'll note during this during this fight for you two, Bubbles, is good communication between the supports, particularly your tanks and your healers, on kind of what is going on. One of the things I keyed into as a DPS while I'm, focusing on my rotation, doing as much damage as I can, was anytime you would say, I need an interrupt, to make sure that stop what you're doing, make sure you get that interrupt, because if it's you that's pinned, it's a pretty quick death. It's only like 1 or 2 seconds before you die if you don't get that interrupt.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's having that communication. So with trying to, one of the challenging things with VMoL, with twins, is positioning is really important. In order to position Skinrai where we want him to be, that way he's consistently in one particular spot. So the DPS, when they're converting, when they're moving their circle, they know where I'm going to be. They know where Skinrai's going to be. So with what you just saw there, I moved myself out of bash range to be able to pick up that interrupt, because I'm trying to walk him back and put him into positioning. So if I move out of any interrupt range with at this point, because I'm running sword and board on the front bar, my interrupt is going to be doing a bash. So when I move too far out, I can't do that. So in that particular case, I move too far away from the boss and try to line of sight him to where he needs to go. I get hit with a channel. That point, it's communicating. Hey, need a bash, and right there, I think that might have been system was right there, and just pick that back up. And so if you get the bash quickly, you're up. Boss moves right in there. But where that gets really challenging is when those channels come out during conversion. And so then all of a sudden you've got your group leaving and there's nobody there to pick that bash up. And so that makes things spicy, and that's how people go down. And then Mag's over there chilling, with his negate bubble, trying to, handle that. And now he's got a, Skinrai all up in his face, out of nowhere. So that communication is important. A range interrupt is also important. You could, do that either, try chill on the tank back bar if you wanted to, or if you're double crossbar tanking, make sure you've got crushing shock as an interrupt, or just have DPS pick it up.
All right, there's that channel. Quick interrupt, and I'll say that the DPS in our group are pretty on their game during these fights to get those interrupts very quickly.
Indeed.
All right, you can see that convergence has just occurred. I will note that convergence can be kind of difficult to spot sometime for a lot of the different people in the trial, especially the DPS. But in this case, you can see that Skinrai just threw their hands up in the air to initiate that convergence. I believe there's also an audio taunt out there, or an audio key or tell. And if you've got your subtitles turned on, you should see that show up at the bottom of your screen as well. especially if you're on the opposite side of the arena and you've got those blue head colors. It's really tough to see that blue appear.
Yeah, with ESO, it really doesn't matter the content. If the boss is putting down the weapon that he's just been beating you with and start doing something different, he is now finding a new way to kill you.
That's right.
So, those anytime you see the weapon go away and something else, happening, that's a pretty big tell that there's a new mechanic about to get started.
Yep. And the reason that I pause here again and bring that up is oftentimes the tanks are uniquely positioned to really see those big key mechanics and the tells that lead into those mechanics from the bosses. The one that really comes to mind is, of course, in Cloud Rest. Like a lot of the hand motions that the boss does, like the different things that like the boss is doing can really help the entire team know what's going on, since you're facing those enemies. So, and your focal vision and everything you're looking at is right on the boss a lot of those times. And I know that your guys' call out of convergence occurring during this fight was really important for the DPS because they may not see those colors. They may not have their bar decluttered like you guys do to make sure you see the correct head color. By the way, in this fight, turn off your buffs. Helps you see what's going on down below. Keep your debuffs only on, and you can tell what head color you are when you have it. But that being said, those kind of quick callouts can really help keep other people alive because they now know to look.
Yeah, and if you look at the bar, you will notice that the debuff that gets put on you for the blue head color is actually purple.
That's right.
So yeah, so don't expect a blue indicator on your bar. It's going to be purple.
And the debuff for the yellow head color is, in fact, orange.
Indeed.
Oh, sauce.
Don't ever change.
All right, looks like an easy block of that heavy. No need to roll dodge.
Very long block, probably influenced by eating it earlier. So little bit of perma blocking there, but that happens when you eat an attack previously that you shouldn't have, and you kind of, oh yeah, this is going to happen, better not get smoked by it twice.
Yep. And of course,
yeah, I know I'm guilty of the blocking at times.
Well, and from your guys' perspective, like as we got new tanks that are going to be watching this video and trying out this fight for the first time. Maybe it might be, I mean, it's a pretty easy trial in general when it comes to ESO content. I know it's one of the first ones that a lot of new tanks kind of cut their teeth on. Why is that kind of those long extended blocks, detrimental to the tank, and why is it frowned upon?
Because it's just a drain to your resources that you don't need. Like, you don't have to block every attack, and it's just going to drain your resources on things that your healers can typically heal you through.
Yeah, and it's, most tank builds have, as far as, resource generation and sustain, they're not going to carry as much, regeneration, whether it be mag or spam regen that the DPS builds are. And so when you're blocking on your sword and board, when you're going to brace, even before you take that damage, when you go to brace, your stam recovery stops.
Yep.
So when you're holding that, you are not getting any of the little stam recovery that you do have coming back. It's also for a lot of tank sets, or the tank sets that you're going to be asked to use. There's a proc condition for that set. So something like Powerful Assault, where you have to cast an assault skill, and not just cast an assault skill, but that Powerful Assault weapon and damage, or weapon and spell damage buff, technically only goes to a certain number of people. So in order to get the full group that buff, you have to cast the skill twice. And so one of the other things is when you're blocking for that long when you don't need to, did you wind up casting Echoing Vigor or Caltrops once or twice? Did you turn it off early? Turn it off doing that early in order to block when you didn't need to, and now only half the group's gotten the buff that you wanted them to get? Or were you already low on a resource and you could have snuck in a heavy attack to help get you some more resources during that time? So those are some of the other things you're looking at when you're trying to avoid that perma blocking.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. In prayer phase, And now to the center of the arena for the two tanks to get the head color set. Seems like you can definitely get into kind of a good rhythm. I know you guys definitely did in here. And now just rinse and repeat in this case, and keep an eye out for those additional ads.
Yeah, and right there on that go around with Skin Ride, that was a perfect example. I mean, I was on my frost staff, and that attack is incoming, and go ahead, get the Caltrops proc off. Now here, because the group is split, you don't have to cast it twice, because you're not going to be able to reach your other raid group members on the other side of the arena. So one cast is good to be able to get half of your trial group PA. And so it's one of those like, hey, get your Caltrops proc off and then block in time to avoid eating it. So you can see the cast, then the quick block, and it happens so quickly. So that's where you don't always need to block for 3-4 seconds when you see one of these highly telegraphed attacks coming in. But it does take a little bit of time, a little bit of experience to get a sense for how long that attack takes to connect. And so once you get that experience and trial leads, you got to give your tanks the ability to get that experience as well. Then you can start doing that. And those are the little things that turn into big things, because right there, that cast of Caltrops before blocking and going through all of that, there's a weapon and spell damage buff for a few seconds that's up, that had you been perma blocking wouldn't have been up.
I'll also note here, exceptional discipline to not be casting your chains real quick right now, or trying to taunt in this Rage of Skinrai on accident. Well, the Rage of Skinrai is who you want, but hitting the Vishai ad over there that Mag is now about to chain in, and accidentally pulling the wrong ad over.
Yeah.
See,
and so that's one
there.
Yep.
Boom, perfect.
Yep. And again, that goes back to what Mag was talking about with the range of different abilities. So, that's one where you kind of have to wait, deal with the attack that Skinrai is doing, because you're going to have to move over. And when you do that, you've got your back to the boss for a few seconds. So it's always best to make that move if you can after they've just completed an attack. Because if you don't, that's how you run the risk of eating that heavy attack that you saw that I took there at the beginning, only now you're taking it in the back, and it's got that knockback, and so then it knocks you in a particular direction, and now a DPS has to move further from where they're supposed to be to come get a res on you.
Exactly.
So you're kind of having to be mindful of all these things as you're doing it.
Yeah, I would say that much like Mag is looking out for those negates to drop and then go after the ads as a second priority to the negate, in your case, that heavy attack is a pretty high priority for you, and then those ads. Now, is the heavy attack going to kill you and put an effect permanently on the arena? But no, but still, get knocked into the wrong head color, because that thing sends you pretty far across the arena flying, would be a bad day.
And it's one of those things that attack may not get you, but one of the things that can happen, and this is where it makes it difficult to recover. Let's say you've got something that happens with conversion. You have somebody that blows up, and so now it's one of those where if you eat that heavy, but now that there's people that are in the middle of trying to get a res, and you need somebody to interrupt that channel that you're seeing right here that's doing damage to you, eating that heavy, and then something else happening, and then you catch another attack or mechanic at the same time, that combination can be what gets you, even if it's not missing that first heavy.
That's right. Death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yep.
I did have it paused here because I just wanted to note that this is, as you mentioned earlier, Bubbles, one of those kind of critical times where there's a channel happening at the same time as convergence. So this is where communication is key, because you've got DPS that must move right now to make sure that they don't end up blowing up their friends. Remember, there's only, I believe it is 4 on each side that have to convert. So there's always going to be 1 or 2 left behind that can get these interrupts. You can see here, we've got Kazum over here, who is a left behind and is able to get that interrupt via that bash, while the rest of the DPS convert, sticking to what is their #1 job at the time. All right, and now we are back into prayer phase one more time, and moving on towards setting our head colors. And then again, kind of rinse and repeat here, with the exception that we get more and more ads.
And so here you're prioritizing getting Skin Rye in his position, get him where he needs to be. That way DPS and the healers can move and not have to worry about things getting sideways. So I think after this point, you'll start to see me panning and start looking for the ads to pick up. Got the block. Got that. And then, okay, there we go.
Yep, sure enough, all those ads are making their way on over. And we've got one prayer phase left, I believe. All right, here we are in convergence again. I will note that during that last ad drop, it looked like they were just positioned well enough where the ads themselves kind of wandered over in the right direction at the right time. Anything to note there, or?
You know, one of those things that, you know, that's kind of, you know, luck of the draw on that one. One of the things that when I'm tanking Skin Rye, where those ads showed up right there, just happen to be the rages. Sometimes they're not going to be the rage. Sometimes they're going to be the will, and the wills need to go over there with the guy. And so one of the things that I'll try to do again is kind of watch what I'm doing, watch my positioning, and, you know, if need be, kind of feet a little bit in and kind of move Skin Rye over and try to move myself over. And what I'm really trying to do is give Mag, or if there's a DPS that's assigned to get the chains, a cleaner sight line to be able to get that will. Because if I'm in between the sight line, so if somebody's looking over from the negate bubble group and they're from the shy group and they're looking over at me, if I am blocking that myself, that makes it harder for them to get the taunt. And then I run the risk of putting Skin Rye in a position where Skin Rye can be taunted. And the same thing happens on the flip side when I'm trying to get the rages off of Mag's side, is depending on where they land at, you're really trying to make sure that you don't taunt something that you're not trying to. So don't just start rattling, pressing your range taunt button. You know, look, tab target if you need to be able to find things and then taunt it. But because the last thing you want to do is wind up taking taunt, especially on the shy, because, you know, Mag's trying to place those negates. And so
right.
if the shy gets hit with a random range taunt that pulls him away, and then Mag's got to wrestle him back down, that's going to throw off the negate placement. And so that's one of those where you hate leaving those ads too far over, because they don't take the ads. The reason why we're doing the opposite head colors is because the DPS that are of the opposite head color of the boss, you know, actually get to deal damage to the boss. And if you're the same head color, there's a damage. The boss isn't going to take the full amount of damage.
Right.
And so when those ads are over there, even though they're not an issue for the group that has the opposite head color, for the group that has the same head color, they can't DPS them down as quickly. And so you want to make sure you have those paired up correctly. That way they're not just wreaking havoc, channeling and beaming the other side of the group.
All right. As this plays out, I'll just highlight, I think that one of the things you mentioned is one of the most important things in this fight in particular is that your positioning between you and Mag of each of these individual bosses is super critical, so that you aren't hitting taunt on the opposite boss on accident. Of course, the twins in VMoL are notorious for the over taunt symptom occurring in ESO, in previous days of ESO, before, you know, all of the overhaul of taunt and soft taunt over multiple iterations. But you know, that positioning, understanding where your taunt is going to be actually landing while you're trying to bring in those ads, I think is critical between the two tanks to ensure that there's no missed taunt occurring.
Yeah, what you're looking on the other side, if you kind of look back over, what's the viewer's right, you can see the interrupt lines on the ads back there. And so if you happen to be on Skinrai and Skinrai goes down first, those you can find yourself in execute where you've got the ads have come down, the bosses are at really low health, they're about to go down. Just because the boss goes down, it doesn't stop there. Those ads stay up.
The fight is not over.
And so that's one of those where, on the flip side, if you're tanking Skinrai and Skinrai goes down first, you're now going to want to, not jump up and down and call victory horn and call it good. They'll pop your war horn if that's what your group is doing, even if it's low numbers. But go pick those interrupt off. Go get those bashes and keep things, tidy for the other side of the trial group.
Yep, I mean, we just had, 4 or 5 ads drop in all at once. If they all happen to proc channel at about the same time, that's almost half your group going down. And if you're not paying attention, it's really easy to wipe here. Great. All right, well, that was both Mag and Bubbles POV. A lot to cover there. I'm sure that you'll enjoy all of that information that we went through, not just on this fight, but on, tanking in general. Thank you, Mag and Bubbles, for all of your comments while we watch those. We're going to watch both these fights now in real time. Mag and Bubbles, both feel free to talk while the fight is playing through here. But I just want you all to see kind of how these fights go in real time for, I would say a pretty optimized trial group. We're doing a good amount of damage. We've got all the support sets. All of our support tanks and healers are wearing some pretty meta sets, I'd say. So this is about how long one of these twins fights will go, without any deaths and losing out on all that DPS while you're waiting for reses. With that, I'll get it started. All right, and after that false start, we are off to the races proper. And again, you can see that tell from both of those bosses raising their hands in the air for the head colors. Same thing that they do during conversions. For Bubbles, for both you and Mag, is anything that you think we've missed as we've been covering these, or any kind of thoughts on the fight in general?
Yeah, one thing during convergence, that negate bubble can be thrown off by a DPS. So when that happens, just look at your positioning and see what's best to position the boss based on that weird negate.
Oh, that's good to know. So the negate bubble is not always on you.
Yeah, it can be thrown off by a DPS coming into group.
Got it. During convergence.
Or a healer. Yeah.
I know you guys also mentioned it. There's a couple of things in the trial that you guys are kind of keen in on. Like Mag, you mentioned trying to position the boss kind of near the third bench over on the left-hand side here. Bubbles, you talked about the candles in the middle of the room, different colors there. I would say that, whatever you guys have available to your group that you want to use for positioning of bosses, there's rugs, there's candles, there's little archways all around the arena. Whatever makes sense for you, use those things. There is definitely, I would say, no standard.
Yeah, just do what you're comfortable with. I mean, if you want to go chase that waterfall, you chase that waterfall. Don't let anybody tell you don't do that.
That's right. Of course, I as a DPS just stay in front of my healers and not behind the tank.
Always a solid plan of attack.
That's right. All right. Another prayer phase, and we're doing the old swap. Now, I'll ask this, Bubbles. I noticed that you get pretty close to Vashai to get that head color. How critical is it to be in proximity to that boss to make sure you guys are getting the correct head colors for your strategy?
I mean, you technically don't need to be that close. I have trust issues with ZOS and things applying like they're supposed to. So I'll get in the boss's hip pocket. And again, that's one of those things where know know your CP, know everything that you've got on your build and how fast you can move. If you're going to get that close, you're definitely going to want to have celerity as a CP. You might want to avoid having bracing anchor, because that slows you down while you're in combat. Even though it gives you the extra block mitigation, it does slow you down. So even though you don't see me using defensive stance with this fight, it's just slotted there for the extra block mitigation because I'm using celerity. I'm not using bracing anchor because I don't want to be slower than I need to be for this fight.
Right. Well, and you can see that that fight took about 3.5 minutes. Not too bad. All right, we're going to jump over to Bubbles POV. We're going to watch that in real time as well. Something to note here, as you're watching, keeping a kind of a general idea of, like, not just the boss you're looking at now, but, you know, what's going on spatially around the arena and the things that are happening over there as well. I know that for me, whenever I'm tanking, I often tend to get kind of hyper fixated on the boss or whatever it is that I'm taunting at that time, and I can very quickly lose SA as to what's going around the arena around me. Keeping that cross check up and, you know, not missing important things on the boss, but also being able to see what's going on in the arena around you can be important. This I love watching Skin around. He just goes full windmill with his mace as he's swinging that around. It's
he's just always doing that, and it's it's really getting a feel for how long that takes. Because the other thing with blocking and it's important to remember is even if an attack doesn't do a lot of damage, if it does have any effect like a knockback or anything of that nature, blocking that attack, prevents that other aspect of their attack from happening. So that's one of those where some people might say, hey, you don't need to block every single one of those, with as big as positioning is, like, I'm just going to go ahead and block through, let him, have his little temper tantrum, get through it and then move on to the next thing that needs to be done. And because there's not a ton of really special skills that you need to, like on the back bar, I'm running Corrupting Pollen. Really, that's just to give an extra synergy. We've got to send them caution in the group. So that's just making sure that there's another synergy out there that DPS can use, and then the minor cowardice that's applied by Corrupting Pollen. Again, not really big, for dealing with the bosses, but as you get multiple enemies that are set up and things get a little bit more difficult, if you don't need a different skill, having some sort of debuff that you can put on ads can definitely help. Just take a little bit of staying out of the damage that they're doing.
A little bit of a close call there with a couple of wrong head killer people getting a little close, but not bad overall. You can see that we're now getting close to execute, going into the last prayer phase, and looks like Vashai is going to go down first here on Mag's side of the arena.
Yep. So just sitting here, the head color is gone, so now you can just move on over.
All right, well, with that, thank you all for joining us. Kind of a long video, I think it's going to end up being for this, but lots of really good information, not just on the twins in VMoL, but I think kind of on how to do a multi-boss fight like this between two tanks, the communication skills, the things you guys are thinking about. Thank you, Bubbles, and thank you, Mag, for joining us. And again, a huge shout out to Ninmeldar on the PlayStation NA server. What a great guild. Really great boss fight to watch here and to be a part of as well. With that, if you guys enjoy this type of content, a little bit of a different type of form of video here with an interview style, please let me know in the comments, like the video, and subscribe as well. We have a huge plan for all sorts of ESO guides, We're going to be throwing out a Discord that is a single source repository for all sorts of ESO information, as well as guided how-to videos. Think about having a bunch of potentially even podcasts or blogs, written content, things like that. Let me know in the comments what you think you would like to see when it comes to ESO guides, ESO mechanics, how-to, things like that. Bubbles and Mag, thanks again for joining us. Anything to add, parting shots before we go?
No, it was fun going back and watching those POVs. And again, Meg did an awesome job on the shy, and that negate placement. That was just awesome to watch again.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.